Okay, welcome everyone to the October 22nd. And guess what? This is the Eclipse Smackdown. We are right in the middle. We've got about 6 days left of this wormhole until we get to the lunar eclipse in Taurus, full moon lunar eclipse. It's a partial eclipse, but it counts in the wormhole that we're in right now. It's been an intense wormhole because it's not just an eclipse. We have eclipses all the time, but this is also a square to Pluto. So this is where the astrologers are talking about this vice grip and this clash, these power struggles, because Pluto represents power. And the United States has been in its Pluto return. So we've been having to reckon with our use of power. And that's happened. I feel like it happens personally because it's also the collective, and the collective is us. It's also happening on the levels of government. And we have Mars in Scorpio, we have Mercury in Scorpio. So it's now intense conversations that are coming to the surface that are being kind of bubbling up, like maybe even some pus bubbles up to the surface. That's what's happening. Yeah, okay. So I'm seeing people go, yep. I mean, all around me, shit is breaking down. For me, it feels really internal, and that doesn't surprise me because Aries is in my 12th house. But for a lot of people, I'm hearing these stories of friendships, couples, things that are just so intense and major breakdown. So I decided to pull a card before I got here. And sometime I just got this new deck. Some of you might know this new deck. It's called the White Light Oracle from Alana Fairchild, and she is the goddess of decks. Everyone must own at least one of her decks because she just brings the medicine. This is definitely her jam. So I pulled this card, Yeshi Sogil 333, and it's got a tiger. And all of a sudden, I stop. I mean, I have chills right now. I realize I had a dream with a tiger. I wouldn't have known that had I not chosen this card. Whew. So there's tiger energy here. There's lion energy here. Both of those energies were in my dream, and I can't remember what happened, but they're there. So this tiger, listen to this story. Well, first, let's presence the energy that wants to come through during this midway point of the eclipse. Wherever you are, whatever kind of intensity you've been undergoing, it's somewhere in your life that is up for a complete redo. And it's bringing to the surface some very intense energy. And here's what Yeshi Sogil 333 says: you shall overcome obstacles. So we're on a good start already. You shall overcome obstacles. Success is imminent. Let's claim that for ourselves. So stay connected to your path no matter what. So if you've been tempted to deviate or say, fuck it, this is just too intense, stay connected to your path. It's interesting because a friend of mine was just ready to blow up her marriage. And I was like, are you kidding me? We're in an eclipse. You don't ever do that in an eclipse, So I like sent the post. It's like, she was like, you were such a pattern interrupt. So the goddess will send pattern interrupts to us when we're about to blow some shit up. And instead, she completely redirected and got into, all right, let's solve a problem here. So success is imminent. Stay connected to your path no matter what, and continue to apply yourself. Allow your spiritual path to support you in every area of your life. So let's drop into that for a minute. We've been doing the work. We've been meditating. We've been taking walks and dialing in to that equilibrium. I'm going to put that word out there because that's the gift frequency we're going to go into with Gene Key 50 today. You've been sourcing your abundance from Mother Nature. You've been doing your shadow work. You've been looking at the things that no longer serve you. You've been looking at patterns. You've recognized the way you've judged and blamed yourself and others. So like that's on the mat. So let that spiritual practice serve you right now. Live by your spiritual beliefs. Seek out the support of your spiritual brothers and sisters for help when needed. I think that's the gift of someone on the same level or higher than you in their spiritual path will pattern interrupt you. They won't agree with your story. But also trust. So yes, reach out for help and also trust that you are intimately and directly connected to the powerful divine light within. There can be dramatic healing breakthrough when you rely on your spiritual connection. So let's presence what kind of a breakthrough we need right now. It's happening in a specific area of your life. What kind of a breakthrough are you on the edge of? And that's the question that we're going to hold today as we go into our gene keys. But I think it's also important to tell the story of this tiger. And this is why is this image here? So I'm going to read a little further. Spiritual teachings from Bhutan hold that the great Indian master Padmasambhava was called to Bhutan from Tibet to subdue demons that were causing difficulty for people in the Paro Valley. So here's the cool thing. He flew to Tibet, and I'm thinking he flew, and then I had to read on. He flew to Tibet, or from Tibet to Bhutan on the back of a supernatural tigress. All right, there we go. He's badass. Right? Landing in a cave high up in the cliffs of Bhutan. That area, by the way, there's a whole mythology around that area of the ascended masters being in this Tibetan plateau area where they lived forever and they did these miraculous things. So I totally believe it. He spent the next 3 days, 3 months, 3 weeks. Sorry, I have to say that over because I said that wrong. He spent the next 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days meditating and performing rituals to subdue the demons of the land, liberating Bhutan from terror into peace. The supernatural tigress is believed to be Yeshi Sogyal, a yogini guardian for humanity and an emanation of the compassionate goddess of peace, prosperity, and long life known as White Tara. Woo! So Yeshi Sogyal's power is that of the tiger Siddha, or medicine of the spirit tiger. So when you receive this oracle, it gives you empowerment and healing by assuming a confident attitude and taking steps forward. So how's that for some oracle divination for today? For the future that we are creating, even though it doesn't look like it, even though Gene Key 50 says the shadow frequency is corruption. And maybe that's where the early Christians got this idea around original sin, this notion that something in our DNA is corrupted. I don't believe that notion of original sin. And I get that there is a sacred wound that we come into incarnation. And that sacred wound can lead us down a shadow path until we wake up. And so inside of our DNA, as Richard Rudd says, there is a corruption in the sequencing of DNA. And that's where we get the shadow, and that's where we get hierarchies, and that's where we get these demons. this energy of, well, let's go back to Gurdjieff and the map of the worlds. It's the lower frequency energies, the world 96 and below, which is devoid of consciousness. So the gift is where I'm going to focus our attention today, and that gift is equilibrium. And let's even position the city. The city is harmony. So it's acoustical. It's when you hear that tone of that singing bowl. Just feel that tone in your body, that all the cells, because they contain water, respond to the acoustics of harmony. And you think about your inner ear. Your inner ear keeps your equilibrium, and it keeps the water in balance. So I like to call equilibrium something that a tarot card reader gave me this statement maybe about 20 years ago. And she said it's called magic in the middle. She talked about how we either go on these high highs or these low lows, but really the magic is in the middle. It's maintaining the equilibrium. And while the dictionary gives us this definition of balance, it also gives us a couple other ways to look at equilibrium. One of the ways is called a calm mind. I was going to say a sound mind. I like that too. A calm, sound mind, equilibrium. It's also a state in which opposing forces, think about that, or influences are balanced. To me, that kind of feels like this integration. So it gives us a clue on our spiritual path that instead of negation, it's actually integration. And I think now the consciousness has arrived at this point in humanity that we are aware that our work with our shadow isn't to negate it. It isn't to repress it. It isn't to try to make it go away. We might get caught up in that because that might be our impulse. But as we study this, as we grow, we get that that's just not going to work. It's part of the template of dark and light, this and that. And so equilibrium, the gift frequency, asks us, how can we integrate dark and light? And we think about heaven and earth, all the polarities. How do we integrate them? And to me, that is the gift of equilibrium. It's not necessarily balance, because balance is a moment by moment thing. You know, it's like being on a paddleboard in the ocean. You might find balance, but the truth is you're working it. You know, your feet are working it. If you've ever been on a paddleboard, your feet are sore after the paddleboard because they're working it. Every little bone in your feet are adjusting to the wave because it's dynamic. Life is dynamic. It's not static. My vet used to say, if you want balance, you got to be 6 feet under. Right? And even then, who knows, because consciousness travels. So maybe your body is experiencing that in decay, but your consciousness is still playing this game of surfing and riding mind stream. Because what are we riding? We're riding the waves of our mind as life serves whatever it serves. What would it take to dance with shadow and light? That's what equilibrium is about. Thank you for that question, Katie K. Katie K is our questioner. I love that. Taking that on. And so I looked at the word equipoise because I just was kind of playing with these words. And it's also the balance of forces or a counterbalance to a force. So we get that word to me spoke of transmutation. So we can take a force that feels like it can take us out and we can transmute it. I think that's what the tiger is saying. So how did Yeshi Shogil spend 3 years, 3 months, 3 days in a cave and rid Bhutan of its demons? Well, he's playing an inner game. He's playing a subtle body game. He's playing a non-physical game. And he's using his own body, his own consciousness, because why did he need to fly on the tiger to get there? Well, he's using his own consciousness as a counterpoint to the energy in order to transmute it. And so why do we care? Well, this is our opportunity. This is what we get to be served up. If we take it on, because we can collapse. And if we do, let it only be for a moment. And then let's get back up. As this card said, let's get back onto our spiritual path. Let's trust that all the seeds we have planted and watered are not for nothing. They're for this moment. They're actually for when you feel like crap. And so let's trust that. And we may not see the fruits of our labors in 2 seconds or 2 minutes. I mean, he was there in that cave for 3 years. Can you imagine the drishti in that man, woman, in that green Tara embodiment? Like the drishti, the third eye gaze, the inner focus it's going to take, the internal harmony he had to experience in order to take the opposing forces and harmonize them. The Gene Key says that equilibrium can come and go. And that's part of the gift frequency. We're still not out of fear. We haven't become enlightened. But the Gene Key says that harmony it never goes away. It's always there. It's mathematics. It's the fundamental nature of the universe. Harmony. So our role here is to conduct that harmony, be the orchestra conductor, to integrate the shadow and the light, the dissonant with the consonant. A couple things to presence in equilibrium is that sometimes we overdo or underdo. And the Gene Keys speak of this in a way of reactive and repressed shadow patterns. And I don't always mean this in a shadow context, but it's something to be aware of on the path of this integration, this oneness. It's really a oneness path. That, let's say, if you have suppressed yourself for a very long time in your voice, as many women have, especially midlife women, because that was just part of the deal of many women who took on the people pleaser archetype. The opposite is taking on a masculine archetype. So let's just say for a moment you took that archetype on. It might be that you have to swing to the whole other side of the pendulum and become obnoxious before you find that equipoise in the middle. Have you noticed that? I remember being with someone who was just discovered that he didn't have any boundaries. And I was like, oh my God, I'm now going to be on the other end of all of this person's boundaries, because they just were learning it. And so because I was a safe person, it was like, will you pick up that plant? No, I won't. We have to overdo sometimes. We have to know that our no counts and works if we've just been yes people. And that was part of our sacred no transmission. So oftentimes there's a archetypal energy that we carry that has gotten us success in some way. And we've either overdone it or underdone it. And we get to bring, that's the mastery of the moment, is your opportunity to bring equipoise, equilibrium, integrating those extremes into neutrality. Someone was telling me that their spiritual teacher said, these times are going to call for neutrality. And we both were presencing that neutrality doesn't mean spiritually bypass. I think that's also in the zeitgeist, in our collective understanding, that we're not talking about let's just skip to nothing's wrong. No, neutrality is actually this equilibrium. It's being willing to feel the feelings without the collapse, or you collapse for a moment and then you get back up, because certainly we all can't live in collapse. And I notice that oftentimes we take turns. Sometimes in my friend group, some people are in collapse, but I've really, my drishti is set. And so I get to add the medicine or be the medicine. And oftentimes it comes right back around when I need to hear it, when I forget my power. So that neutrality is in the heart center. It's uniting our instincts with our divine awareness, our humanity with our divine awareness. It's not trying to get rid of our humanity or become completely angelic or divine. That's not the assignment here. It's to integrate them. Heaven on earth. We still don't know what that means. But I love that we keep saying it. I love that I keep saying it, because I know that it's coming if I keep saying it. There's something in me that wants it, that's driving toward it, that feels like it's possible, that feels like it's real and true. And so I say it and I say it. And then I look at my life and I'm like, that looks like a shit show. Doesn't look like the divine on earth, but I just keep at it. Keep at it, as this card was saying. Don't take yourself off the spiritual path. I love that. Karen says the pendulum is coming up a lot for me lately. I want to hear more about that in our sisterhood activation. So there's a time, and I think I'll end with this. There's a time when that pendulum swing, where we underdo or overdo something as a way that we got successful. There's a time when that ends. It completes itself. And just like a pendulum, what happens after it starts to slow down, it comes to the magic in the middle. And there's the mastery. The mastery doesn't need to go all the way out in either way. It already knows that it's integrated the truths that the polar opposites are carrying. And that brings us to, nothing is 100% false. So even in this highly polarized world, we can hold the space that nothing is 100% false. Somebody's pointing to something that has some truth in it. And so when we integrate that truth with the opposite truth, the equal and opposite truth, then we become wiser beings. We become more trustworthy. And as Gene Key 50 and the teaching of equilibrium and harmony point us to, we actually become free. There's a line at the end of the gift transmission that I really love, and I'm going to read it. He said, herein lies the great secret to humanity's future collective harmony. And this is on all of our radars right now. It can only be achieved through individual freedom. And there's an and here. It's not just all about individual freedom and the trust in the self-organizing intelligence that emerges from that freedom. It's a very important point because we have a lot of beliefs that are being deeply questioned right now around how we're successful, how we make money, how relationships work, that exposes our lack of trust in the freedom of each individual person. And I'll give you an example. This friend of mine was telling me that her husband, she and her husband have a joint venture together. And the Shakti in her body, the energy in her body is not aligning with it. And he really wants it, really, really wants it. And so he's coming off controlling to her to get her to do it. And part of her really wants to do it because she sees that he wants it. And we were talking about this because you can't fake Shakti. I'm like, if it's not there for you, this isn't going to go anywhere. You know, my like Mercury and Scorpio, I get to have that conversation with her. You know, it's not going to go anywhere because Shakti is the truth. You got to follow the energy. Where's the energy? And so those agreements that were made about this joint venture have to get renegotiated. And here's what I say to that is at these kinds of times, these breaking point times, we just get to lay it all on the table. And we get to say, what's true? If I weren't lying to myself anymore, if I weren't lying to you anymore, if I really were to come clean, what's true? And that act right there is a Gene Key 50 act because it really says, yes, that freedom to do what is true will actually cause and create an incredible self-organizing venture. But we got to be willing to say the thing. We got to be willing to follow the Shakti. And when we can let go of our expectations, of our fears, of our scarcity, of our demands, all those shadow frequencies in the space, we can just name them and witness them. Something greater emerges. Because the truth is, creativity is always creating. It always wants something. But we are in co-creation. So we have to listen. And it comes through our embodiment. And that embodiment tells us what's next, what's next. And that results in harmony, in the flourishing of the community. It's really where everybody wins. It's maybe not an easy path for where we currently are, but it is simple. We've got all the GPS systems right here. We really don't need anything else. We've overtrained ourselves. If we talk about the pendulum, we've overtrained ourselves in strategy, in thinking, and in this case, in business planning and kind of having it all mapped out. We've overtrained ourselves there. Some of you haven't, and some of you need to. But as a collective in the masculine, we've overtrained ourselves there. And we have forgotten that it's a partnership, that all of that, yes, you need a business plan. Yes, you need a strategy. Yes, you need to take concrete steps. And let's not forget the biggest yes, and that is that the Shakti, the energy that's flowing through you, is what wins. All of the mechanisms are in service to that energy. And so when I work with clients in the business sector, particularly, I am looking for the Shakti. That's why I love to have my business masterminds, because I have time to hear you and see you and watch and follow you on social. And I'm seeing where the Shakti is. I remember Ali from our last cohort of business and made some massive changes, big breakthroughs, quit her job, reinvented herself, met her next version of herself. And what I saw is that her writing, every time she made a post, her writing just shone, it was bright, it was brilliant. And so it takes someone who can see, like I said to her, your writing is epic, keep writing. She's like, it is? We don't see it. We don't see ourselves. And so that's an example to me of how the Shakti can grow. It gets amplified and our inner radiance shines and we get seen. And that inner freedom allows this self-organizing principle of others then to say, oh, I see you. I want what you have. I need that solution. She happens to be a naturopathic doctor. So I'm going to end there. We've woven a lot together. As we end, let us tune into an inner frequency of harmony. Let's take a deep breath in this moment. And let it settle in. And let's rub our hands together and blast it out. The world could use a little touching in with this gene key. As we gather all the positive energy that we have generated here, that tiger energy, that confidence, that commitment to our path, we dedicate it to the merits. May all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste.